The jar sat on the counter like it had always been there, squat, wide-mouthed, the kind they used to sell pickles in at the dollar store. The label had been soaked off long ago, leaving behind a ghost of glue and a faint green tint in the glass. Inside, folded tight and small, the way you fold something when you want it to take up as little space as possible, was a $5 bill. Just one. The same one that had been there yesterday, and the day before, and every day for the past 4 years. The man who left it was already gone. He'd walked out before the lunch rush, the way he always did, quietly, without making a show of it, setting the jar back exactly where he'd found it, handle of the spoon facing right, lid resting loose but not open. The cook at the window had watched him go. She always watched him go. She just never said anything about it. Some things you don't ask about. You just let them be. But we need to go back. Back before the jar. Before the last morning. Back to a February that bit through the walls of a converted garage in East Nashville, where the radiator knocked 3 times at midnight and then gave up entirely. Delia Voss Beaumont was 41 years old and had been sleeping in her dead mother's house for 7 months when she got the job at Patton's. Not because she wanted it. She'd wanted a lot of things before the hospital bills came. Before the estate got tied up in court because her mother had died without a will. And her brother Calvin, not in this list, her brother had contested everything, including the microwave. She'd wanted the accounting position at Meridian Freight, where she'd worked for 11 years before the layoffs. She'd wanted the apartment on Fessler's Lane with the washer-dryer hookup and the kitchen window that faced east. She'd wanted a lot of things. What she got was a broken radiator, a box of her mother's costume jewelry she couldn't bring herself to sell, and a job application for a lunch counter on Gallatin Pike because the manager, a heavy woman named Yvonne Tate, had put a help wanted sign in the window and left it there long enough that Delia finally walked in. "You ever wait tables before?" Yvonne had asked. "I can learn anything in a day," Delia said. She didn't say it with bravado. She said it the way someone says something they know is true because they've had to prove it too many times. Yvonne studied her for a moment, then handed her an apron. Patton's Lunch was not a restaurant. It occupied the front half of a building that used to be a hardware store, and it still smelled faintly of motor oil if the AC kicked off. There were 9 tables, a counter with 8 stools, a grease-stained pass-through window to the kitchen, and a chalkboard menu on the wall that Yvonne updated in green chalk every Monday. The food was cheap, the coffee was decent, and the lunch specials were always sold out by 12:45. Delia tied her apron on a Tuesday in late February. By Thursday, she had the menu memorized. By the following Monday, she knew which customers wanted their coffee refilled without asking, which ones needed their check before they asked for it, and which ones needed an extra minute even when they said they were ready. She was good at reading people. 11 years of working accounts payable had made her precise, patient, and very good at noticing what other people overlooked. She noticed the man at stool 7 on her 3rd week. He came in on a Wednesday, sat down without looking at the menu, ordered the daily special, white beans and cornbread, and a glass of water. He had work boots that needed resoling and a canvas jacket with a torn pocket sewn shut with what looked like fishing line. His hands were large and rough, the kind that have been outside in every kind of weather. He ate slowly, deliberately, the way people eat when they're used to eating alone and have stopped pretending otherwise. When he finished, he placed a $5 bill on the counter. Not beside the check, on top of it. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and produced a second 5, folded lengthwise, and set it beside the jar of sugar packets near the napkin dispenser. He left. Just like that. Delia stared at the folded bill for a long moment, then picked it up, unfolded it, smoothed it against her palm. "He does that every time," said Yvonne, wiping down the far end of the counter without looking up. "Every single Wednesday." "Leave it." "Leave it where?" Yvonne nodded toward the pass-through. "In the jar, the one by the registers." Delia looked. The squat glass jar with the ghost of a pickle label. She walked over, dropped the folded 5 inside. It settled against 2 others she hadn't noticed. She didn't ask any more questions. Not that day. His name was Everett Kane. She learned that from the credit card receipt 2 Wednesdays later, when he ordered the meatloaf instead of the special and paid with plastic. She didn't say it out loud. She just noted it. Everett Kane. She filed it the way she filed things. Quietly, precisely, without fanfare. He was 53, she guessed, though he could have been older if the work had been hard enough. His hair was gray at the temples, black in the back, and always slightly flattened on one side like he'd been wearing a hat all morning and taken it off in the parking lot. He had a scar across the left knuckle of his index finger. Not a knife scar, a burn scar, the wide flat kind you get from a pipe or an exhaust manifold. He sat with good posture, which surprised her. Men who worked with their hands often hunched by their 40s. He didn't, he ordered simply. The daily special. Water, no ice. Sometimes a slice of pie if it was apple. He tipped exactly 20%, paid his bill, and then left the folded 5 in the jar on his way out, every Wednesday, without fail. Rain, ice, a February that closed half the roads in Davidson County. He came in. He sat at stool 7. He ordered the special. He left the 5. Delia didn't say anything about it for 6 weeks. Then, one Wednesday in April, the lunch rush was brutal. A church group of 22 who hadn't called ahead, 2 no-shows from the kitchen, and the AC unit that Yvonne had been threatening to replace for 2 years finally gave out entirely. By the time Everett sat down at stool 7, Delia had been on her feet for 6 hours straight, and she'd eaten half a dinner roll standing over the prep sink at 11 a.m. She brought him his water. She didn't smile, not a real one. She said the usual, and her voice came out flat, stripped of the warmth she usually managed to keep in it no matter how tired she was. He looked at her. Just looked, the way someone looks when they're actually paying attention. Long day, he said. It wasn't a question. Long week, she said. Long year. He nodded once. He didn't offer anything else. Didn't say it gets better. Didn't tell her to hang in there. Didn't reach for any of the hollow things people say when they can see someone struggling and don't know what to do about it. He just ordered his food and let her do her job. When she came back with his plate, he said without looking up, "The pie any good today?" "Peach," she said. "Yvonne made it this morning." "I'll take a slice." She brought it. He ate it slowly, the way he ate everything. When he was done, he left his 20%, stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked to the register. He reached into his pocket. He didn't have a 5. He checked his other pocket. Nothing. He stood there for a moment with his hand resting on the counter, looking at the jar. Delia watched from the far end of the counter. She saw the moment his face settled into something that was not quite resignation, not quite frustration, just the quiet determination of a man who had made a decision about something long ago and was not in the habit of breaking it. He went back to his stool. He looked in his jacket again. He checked the interior pocket, the torn one with the sewn-shut flap. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, then a pen. He wrote something on the paper and walked it to the register. "I'll bring it next week," he said. Then he left. Delia unfolded the piece of paper. It was a receipt from a parts store on Dickerson Road. On the back, in tight, careful handwriting, "I owe the jar 1.5. E. Kane. Wednesday." She put it in the jar with the bills. He came back the following Wednesday with 2 5s. He said nothing about it. He sat at stool 7, ordered the special, ate slowly, left 20%, and put both 5s in the jar on his way out. 1 for last week. 1 for this week, like it was a debt he intended to honor. She watched him go, then looked at the jar. 5 bills now. 6, counting the one from the week before last. All 5s, all folded the same way. It was Yvonne who first told her where the money went. Not all at once. Yvonne was not an all-at-once kind of woman. She let things come out the way bread rises, slow and without warning until suddenly it's there. "You know the Ortega boy," she said one afternoon, wiping down the chalkboard while Delia counted the till. Delia knew Hector Ortega the way she knew most of the regulars, by sight, by order, by the things she'd noticed in 2 months of watching. 19 years old, maybe 20, came in twice a week for coffee and the cheapest thing on the menu. Had a textbook with him every time, always open, always highlighted in 3 different colors. One morning she'd seen him staring at the same page for 40 minutes without turning it. "I know him," she said. "He's trying to get into the nursing program at Tennessee State," Yvonne said. "Been trying for 2 years, sir. His mama can't work anymore," her back went. "His older sister's got 2 kids and a part-time job at the grocery. He's the one keeping the lights on." She capped the chalk. "He's also $300 short of his application fees and testing costs." Delia set down the stack of ones. She looked at the jar. "The jar," she said. "It wasn't a question." Yvonne nodded. "Everett started it 4 years ago. He comes in, he puts in his 5. Other people started adding. Not a lot, but some. Every month or so, when there's enough, I give it to whoever needs it most." She shrugged. "Last year it was the dishwasher's car repair. Before that, it was Simone from table 6. Her furnace went in January." She paused. "Everett never asks where it goes. He just keeps putting it in." Delia looked at the jar for a long time. "Who started it?" she asked. "Why $5? Yvonne looked at her, then looked away. "You'd have to ask Everett." She didn't ask him. Not for 3 more months. In the meantime, her own life kept doing what it had been doing, grinding forward on credit and sheer refusal to stop. The court finally settled her mother's estate, which meant she got the house and Calvin got the furniture and a lump sum that probably didn't cover his lawyer's fees. The house needed a new water heater, 2 windows reglazed, and the back porch steps were soft enough in 2 places that she'd started stepping around them out of habit. She had no money for any of it. She took on Sunday shifts. She started sleeping better, which she attributed to exhaustion and nothing else. She learned that the coffee at Patton's tasted better in the afternoon than in the morning, because Yvonne used a slightly different ratio after 11. Though Yvonne denied this, she learned that the regulars, the church ladies who came every Thursday, the retired letter carrier who always ordered the same thing her husband used to order, the kid from the music school who paid an exact change, they came for the food only the way people go to church, only for the sermon. There was something else, some need that wasn't hunger. She started noticing who had a good week and who didn't. She started remembering which ones took their coffee with 2 sugars in July but 1 in August because they were watching their weight. She started writing nothing down. She just knew. One Wednesday in July, Everett came in at 12:30 instead of 12, sat at stool 7 and ordered the special. He looked the same as always, except that he was quiet in a way that felt different from his usual quiet. His usual quiet was settled, like still water. This was the other kind. Delia brought his food. She refilled his water without being asked. She didn't say anything. When she came back to clear the plate, she said without planning to, "You okay?" He looked up. She'd surprised him. Most people didn't ask. "My son," he said, and then stopped. He pressed his lips together. "He's having a rough stretch." She waited. "He's 26. Good kid. Smart. Made some choices that cost him." He turned the water glass a quarter turn on the counter. "He's trying to come back from them and it's hard for him and I can't." He stopped again, set the glass down. "I'm not much help from here." "Where is he?" "Knoxville. We don't talk as much as we should." He said it the way you say something when you've already accepted the weight of it. "I come in here on Wednesdays because the rest of the week I spend worrying about him. Wednesday is the day I try to do something that isn't worrying." He left the 5 in the jar on his way out. She stood at the counter after he left, the rag in her hand, not wiping anything. She asked him in September. The lunch rush had thinned out. It was a rainy Wednesday, and they were the only 2 people in the front of the house. She just brought his water and he was looking out the front window at the parking lot running wet. "The $5, she said. "Why 5? He looked at her. "Yvonne told me about the jar," she said. "Not everything, just enough. I've been wondering about the 5. He was quiet for a moment. He turned the water glass on the counter, the same slow quarter turn, like he was buying time to find the right words. "I used to work the line at a fabrication plant," he said. "Long time ago when Marcus, my son, was small. Good job, union, good pay for a man without a college degree." He paused. "I got laid off, economy went sideways, plant cut the line in half, and I was on the wrong half." He looked at his hands. This was right after Diane left, my ex-wife. She didn't leave because of the layoff. The problems were older than that, but the timing made everything worse. I had Marcus on weekdays and an apartment on the other side of town I could barely pay for, and absolutely no idea what to do next. Delia didn't say anything. There was a diner near the apartment. Smaller than this. The kind that's been there since the 50s and nobody's really updated anything. I used to go in for breakfast sometimes because it was cheap and I needed somewhere to sit as it wasn't my apartment. He set the water glass down. There was a woman who worked there. I don't know her name. I never asked, which I've thought about since. She was maybe 60, maybe older, and she had the kind of face that looked like it had seen a lot of mornings like mine. Early, cold, not going the way they were supposed to. Delia was still. One morning I came in and I had exactly $8 to my name. Not $8 until payday. $8. I had a job interview in the afternoon and I needed to eat something that wasn't the end of a box of crackers, so I ordered the $2 breakfast. Eggs and toast, no meat, and a coffee, which was another $1.25. She brought it out and I ate it, and when I was done I looked at the check and I had $4.75 left over. He stopped. He looked at his water. She'd written on the check, just a small thing at the bottom in pencil. It said, "Don't skip breakfast tomorrow. You look like someone who needs to eat." He smiled, but not at Delia, at something that wasn't in the room. I left her a $5, everything I could leave and still have bus fare. I folded it small because I didn't want to make a production of it. He shrugged. The interview didn't work out, but I went back the next morning anyway, bought a coffee. Sat there for a while. She was working. She nodded at me and kept going. That was it. That was enough. He picked up his fork. I got the job at the fabrication plant 3 weeks later. Good job. And then I lost it. And then I did other things. And now I fix HVAC systems and I'm fine. I'm fine. But I never forgot that woman and the $5. Because she wrote that on the check before she knew how much I was going to leave. She wrote it because she saw me sitting there and she thought it might help. And it did. Not because of what it said exactly. Just because she noticed. He began eating. I started putting 5 in a jar wherever I was a regular, he said, around a bite of cornbread. I've been at Patton's 4 years. Yvonne said to let her handle the who and when of it, so I do. He didn't say anything else about it. Delia went back to work. She cleared table 4. She refilled the church lady's coffee. She wiped down the counter where Everett had been sitting after he left, and she stood there for a moment with the rag in her hand. She went to the register. She opened her wallet. She had a 10 and 3 ones. She unfolded the 10, thought about it, folded it back. She pulled out one of the ones. Then she thought of something. The broken steps on the back porch. The window that needed reglazing. The check she'd deposited last week that had covered the water heater but nothing else. And she folded it back, too. She put her wallet away. She stood there another moment. Then she took out the 10 and put it in the jar. She didn't do it with ceremony. She just put it in and went back to work. Hector Ortega got into the nursing program in October. He came in on a Thursday morning to tell Yvonne, not knowing it was Yvonne's day off, and ended up telling Delia instead. He was so lit up from the inside that she could feel it standing 3 feet away. "I got in," he said. "I actually got in." She brought him a coffee, on the house. She didn't tell him about the jar. She wasn't sure it was her story to tell. He sat at the counter and drank his coffee and talked about the program, about his mother, about how his sister had cried when he told her. He was still talking when 2 other customers came in, and Delia had to go take their order. By the time she looked back, he'd left. He'd left $1 on the counter, which was 50 cents more than the coffee cost. She smiled at that. She put it in the jar. The winter was hard, not in any dramatic, single way. Just the accumulation of it. The pipes in the old garage that used to be her mother's studio froze in December, and she spent 2 days with space heaters and bath towels trying to prevent what happened anyway. She filed the insurance claim. The claim was denied. The adjuster, a thin man with a clipboard, explained that the policy her mother had held for 30 years didn't cover the outbuilding, only the main structure. And did she have questions? She had a lot of questions. None of them were ones he could answer. Then her hours at Patton's got cut, not out of malice, but because January was always slow, and Yvonne ran on margins so thin they were practically theoretical. Delia picked up a weekend shift at a hotel breakfast bar across town. She drove 22 minutes each way in a car that needed new tires and expressed its feelings about this by shuddering any time she exceeded 55 miles per hour. She did not exceed 55 miles per hour. In February, Yvonne called her into the office, which was really a corner of the storeroom with a desk wedged between the dry goods and the box fan, and told her that the full hours were coming back in March and also that she was getting a raise. "I can't do a lot," Yvonne said, "but I can do something." Delia nodded. Her throat was tight and she did not trust her voice, so she didn't use it. She nodded again, then went back to work. She cried in the parking lot at the end of her shift. Not sad crying. The other kind, the kind that comes when you've been holding so much for so long that something small breaking open releases pressure you didn't know you'd been storing. The next Wednesday, Everett came in. He sat at stool 7. He ordered the special. The February special was chicken and dumplings, which Yvonne made from scratch every Tuesday evening for the Wednesday menu. He ate slowly. He drank his water. He left 20%. He put the 5 in the jar. Delia watched him. She thought about the woman in the diner with the pencil note on the check. She thought about how he'd been doing this for 4 years, and Yvonne had been giving it out for 4 years, and she, Delia, had been at Patton's for 7 months and had been watching and had understood none of it until someone decided to tell her. She brought him a slice of apple pie. She set it down in front of him. He looked at it, then at her. "On me," she said. "Yvonne won't mind." He looked at it for another moment. Something in his face moved the way something moves when you're not expecting kindness and it reaches you anyway. "Thank you," he said. "Just that. No more." He ate the pie slowly. He looked out the window at Gallatin Pike in the February gray. When he finished, he set his fork down neat and clean, across the plate the way a man does when he was taught to do it right a long time ago. "My son called last night," he said. He hadn't looked up from the plate. "First time in 3 months." Delia waited. "He's doing better." He turned the water glass. "He got a job." Said he's been going to meetings. Said he wanted to say he was sorry, which he didn't have to say, but he said it anyway. A pause. "I told him I was proud of him. I meant it." She refilled his water. She didn't say anything because there wasn't anything to say that would add to it. He left. The jar on the counter was fuller than usual that day. Delia had noticed other regulars putting things in over the past month. $1 here, a couple of quarters, once a 10 from the retired letter carrier who said only for the jar and asked for no further discussion. The jar was becoming a thing people knew about without it ever being announced. It just existed. It held what people put in it, and Yvonne decided where it went, and nobody made a speech about any of it. In March, Delia's brother Calvin called. He did not call often, twice since their mother died, both times about the estate, both times ending in silences too long to be comfortable. This call was different. He was calling from a hospital in Atlanta. He'd had a cardiac event. Minor, the doctors said, relatively speaking. Whatever relatively meant when you were 54 years old and your heart had stopped sending things through in the right order for 11 minutes. He'd called their cousin first. Then he called Delia. She drove to Atlanta. It took 5 hours and 40 minutes because of a wreck outside Chattanooga. She sat in the waiting room of Emory University Hospital for 2 hours before a nurse showed her in. Calvin was in a bed that dwarfed him, thinner than she remembered, a monitor clipped to his finger. He looked at her when she came in, and his face did something she hadn't seen it do since they were children. It just opened. "You didn't have to come," he said. "You called me," she said. She sat in the chair beside the bed. They didn't talk much at first. She brought him water. She asked what he wanted from the cafeteria. She went and got it and came back, and they ate together in the hospital room in the particular quiet of people who are relearning each other. At some point he said, "I was unfair to you, about the house." She looked at the window. "I was grieving and I was angry and I took it out on the wrong things." He shifted in the bed. She was my mother too, and I didn't know how else to hold on to that. I know, Delia said. I don't want to be the kind of brother who calls from a hospital. She looked at him. Then don't be. He nodded. They sat in the quiet a little longer. She drove back to Nashville the next morning. The wreck outside Chattanooga was gone. The road was clear. She drove 55 the whole way, which meant she was back in time for her afternoon shift at Patton's. She put a 20 in the jar when she got in. She didn't explain it. The thing nobody tells you about slow change is that you don't notice it until you're already somewhere different. By the following summer, Delia Voss Beaumont had been at Patton's for 16 months. The back porch steps had been repaired. She and Calvin had done it on a weekend in April, which was not something she would have predicted in February. The car still shuddered above 55. The house still smelled like her mother in certain corners, which she had stopped trying to air out and started trying to appreciate. She knew everyone who walked through Patton's door by name. She knew what Hector ordered when he was studying hard versus when he was coming in to celebrate something. She knew that the retired letter carrier's name was George and that he'd been coming in since Patton's opened because the owner before Yvonne had let him sit for an hour without buying anything on the morning of his wife's funeral, and he'd never forgotten it. She knew that the church ladies tipped in exact dollar amounts and meant it as precision, not stinginess. She knew that the man who came in every other Friday and only ordered soup had lost his job 3 months ago and hadn't told anyone but his order had told her. She knew things, the way you know things when you have been paying attention for long enough. She started writing notes on checks. Small things, in pencil, at the bottom. Nothing heavy, nothing that required a response. Just, good to see you today. Or, hope your week gets easier. Or, once to the soup man. The meatloaf's good today. On me. She never made a production of it. She just wrote them and let them go. Everett Kane came in on a Wednesday in July, which was routine, and sat stool cell 7, which was routine, and ordered the special, pulled pork and coleslaw, which was routine. He ate slowly. He was more talkative than usual, which wasn't saying much. More talkative than usual for Everett meant 3 sentences instead of 1. His son was in Nashville now. Stayed in a place over on Dickerson while he got his footing. Came over for dinner on Sunday sometimes. Everett made chili, which was the one thing he was confident cooking. He's a good kid, Everett said. He just needed time to find his way back. Delia nodded. She refilled his water. I'm thinking about retiring, he said. She looked at him. Not from everything, just from some of it. My back's not what it was. He shrugged. Younger guys can do the crawl space work. I'll do the service calls. Good, she said. He smiled. It was a rare thing and it sat well on his face. He ate his pie, apple, and left his 20% and walked to the register. He reached into his pocket. He placed the 5 in the jar. It was folded the same way it always was, the same tight fold, the same sharp crease, tucked in without ceremony. Then he did something he hadn't done before. He paused. He stood at the counter with his hand resting on the jar for a moment, like he was listening to something. Then he nodded, not at Delia, not at anyone in the room, and walked out. The bell above the door rang. He crossed the parking lot. He got into his truck and drove north on Gallatin Pike into the July heat. Delia stood at the far end of the counter. She didn't move for a moment. Then she walked to the register. She looked at the jar. The morning light was coming through the front window and it caught the glass at an angle, turning the old pickle jar almost golden, the way light does when it finds something ordinary and insists on making it significant. She reached under the register. She found a Post-it note and a pen. She wrote one line. She folded the Post-it small and tucked it inside the jar, between the bills. Then she went to table 3, where a woman was waiting for her check, and she got back to work. That evening, after close, Yvonne counted the jar. She did this the last Wednesday of each month. She pulled out the bills, smoothed each one on the counter, stacked them in order. When she got to the Post-it, she unfolded it. She read it once. She set it on the counter next to the stack of 5s. She read it again. It said, "He noticed," and it changed everything. Yvonne stood in the quiet kitchen after everyone else had gone, the fluorescent light humming above the prep table, the jar on the counter with the ghost of a pickle label still visible in the glass. She folded the Post-it in thirds. She put it back in the jar. She put the lid on. She turned off the light. Some things don't need to go anywhere. Some things are already exactly where they belong.